Hello everyone, tonight we peel back the veil of fiction to confront a truth more chilling than any campfire tale. You know the name, Dracula, a creature of the night, a lord of vampires, forever etched into our collective nightmares. But what if I told you that the real man behind the myth was not merely a monster of legend, but a brutal architect of fear, a ruler whose methods were so utterly horrifying, they made the fictional vampire seem almost merciful. This isn't a story of fangs and immortality, but of blood, iron, and a will forged in the crucibles of unspeakable cruelty. This is the story of Vlad III, Prince of Wallachia, a man history remembers as Vlad the Impaler, and his reality, I assure you, was far more terrifying than the myth. Brace yourselves. The truth is often the most monstrous tale of all. If you are ready to descend into this dark chapter, hit that like button, and let's begin. Wallachia, 15th century, a land nestled between the soaring Carpathians, it was a strategic prize, a cultural crossroads, and often a blood-soaked battleground picture, a kingdom constantly teetering on the brink, a pawn in a brutal game played by colossal empires. To the west, Christian Europe; to the east, the unstoppable tide of the Ottoman Turks, a force that threatened to engulf the entire continent. In this volatile theatre, princes rose and fell with terrifying speed. Their reigns measured not in decades, but in desperate, bloody years, sometimes mere months. Survival was a daily struggle, a pact with the devil or a dance with the hangman. This was the world into which Vlad III was born. Around 1431, his father, Vlad II Dracula, was a member of the powerful Basarab dynasty, a prince struggling to maintain Wallachia's fragile independence amidst the political maelstrom. The elder Vlad bore the epithet Dracula, meaning the dragon, derived from his membership in the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order dedicated to defending Christianity against the Ottomans. So Vlad III became Dracula, or Son of the Dragon, a name that, centuries later, would be twisted, becoming synonymous with unimaginable horror. But before he became the Impaler, before he became the legend, Vlad was a boy, a prince, in waiting, living a childhood that would irrevocably scar his soul and define his reign. The year is for Vlad II Dracula, seeking to secure his throne and appease the burgeoning power of the Ottomans, makes a fateful decision. He travels to the Ottoman court, accompanied by his young sons, Vlad III and Radu. It was a diplomatic mission, a supposed gesture of fealty, but it quickly devolved into a nightmare. The Sultan, Murad II, saw an opportunity. Vlad II was released, but his two young sons, Vlad and Radu, were kept behind hostages, pawns in the Sultan's grand strategy. Imagine the terror, the profound sense of betrayal. A prince barely a teenager, stripped of his freedom, his identity, torn from his home and family, thrown into the gilded cage of his father's greatest enemy. For Vlad, this wasn't just imprisonment, it was an education in brutality, a masterclass in the ruthless exercise of power. He spent years in Ottoman captivity, years steeped in an environment where life was cheap, where treachery was currency, and where the most effective means of control was often unbridled terror. He witnessed public executions, the flaying of enemies. He saw how fear could bend entire populations, how absolute power, when wielded without mercy, could crush all opposition. Radu, his younger brother, adapted. He became favored, converting to Islam, integrating into the Ottoman court. But Vlad seethed. He absorbed it all, not with acceptance, but with a cold, burning hatred. Every humiliation, every slight, every moment of powerlessness etched itself onto his spirit, hardening him, shaping him into a weapon. His mind, once that of a prince, was being remolded into that of a predator. He was learning the language of cruelty, a language he would one day speak with terrifying fluency. The seeds of the Impaler were sown in the dungeons and palaces of his captors. He learned to survive. And he learned that only absolute power, absolute fear, could truly protect a ruler in such a merciless world. This period of captivity wasn't just a pause in his life. It was the crucible that forged his identity, transforming him from a vulnerable boy into a hardened, calculating avenger. The world he would return to would soon feel the full force of the lessons he learned behind enemy lines. The year his father, Vlad II Dracula, and his elder brother Mircea had been brutally murdered. Not by the Ottomans, but by Wallachian boyars, nobles who, weary of his father's vacillating loyalties, conspired with Hungary's John Hunyadi. They captured his father, decapitated him, and buried his brother Mircea alive, a deep agonizing wound, a betrayal from within. This was the boy who was once Vlad III died that day. In his place, a singular, terrifying purpose took root: absolute vengeance, absolute control, no matter the cost. His first attempt to reclaim his father's throne, with Ottoman backing, was short-lived, lasting only a few months. He was still too young, too inexperienced. He fled, a hunted man, a refugee. He understood then, with chilling clarity, that alliances were fleeting, loyalty a fragile commodity, and power, if not clutched with an iron fist, would slip like sand through fingers. It would take 8 more years of exile, of ceaseless intrigue and calculated maneuver, before Vlad would finally return to Wallachia in 1456. Not as a desperate claimant. He had secured the backing of Hungary, his father's former enemy, through cunning diplomacy and a promise to turn against the Ottomans. The stage was set. His second reign began with a clear, brutal objective: cleanse Wallachia of all treachery, establish order through absolute terror, and make his enemies pay. In full, the boyars, those treacherous nobles who had murdered his family, Vlad summoned them, hundreds of them, to his capital of Tvergavi for an Easter feast. They came perhaps hoping for reconciliation, perhaps still underestimating the young prince. They were gravely mistaken. Imagine the scene: a grand hall, tables laden with food, the air thick with tension and forced pleasantries. Then the doors slam shut. Vlad, his eyes like cold steel, he demands to know how many princes they had served, how many they had betrayed. They stammered, they boasted of loyalty to him now, but Vlad knew their history, their fickle nature. He did not forget. His voice, calm yet chilling, declared their fate. Not death by sword, not a quick end. No, their betrayal would be repaid in a currency of suffering. The older boyars, those a horrific public display, but for the others, the younger, fitter ones, a different fate awaited. They were marched, under guard, for over 100 kilometers to the ruins of an ancient fortress high in the mountains, Ponari citadel. Their task: rebuild it, brick by agonizing brick, under the lash of his guards. Many perished from exhaustion, starved. Those who survived, who watched their compatriots die, completed the fortress, a testament to Vlad's brutal will, a new impregnable stronghold forged from the forced labor and despair of his enemies. Ponari, a silent sentinel, still stands today, a stark reminder of his unforgiving wrath. This wasn't just punishment. It was a grand theatrical act of psychological warfare. Vlad was sending an undeniable message to every Wallachian, every nobleman, every peasant: betray me, and your suffering will be legendary. From this point forward, the name Vlad Dracula would cease to be merely Son of the Dragon. It would become synonymous with a single, horrifying act: the Impaler. We'll delve into the specifics of his reign of terror after you hit that subscribe button, so you don't miss any more. The name alone conjures images of unspeakable horror. But what did it truly mean? Vlad III did not invent impalement. It was a method of execution, a gruesome public display practiced in various forms across the ancient world. But Vlad, he refined it. He weaponized it. He elevated it to an art form of terror. His method was agonizingly slow. Victims were the stakes were often rounded, not sharpened, to prevent immediate fatal injury. The executioners were skilled, not in killing quickly, but in prolonging suffering. The stake would be inserted rectally or vaginally, then raised upright, allowing gravity to slowly, inexorably pull the body down, driving the stake through the vital organs, often for hours, even days, before. It was a spectacle of pain designed to maximize agony and humiliation. The victim's struggle was the performance, a chilling warning to all who witnessed it. Imagine the screams, the stench, the raw, visceral fear radiating from those silent, tormented figures dotting the landscape. For Vlad, impalement was not just punishment for crime. It was a tool of statecraft. His Wallachia, a land ravaged by lawlessness, banditry, and corruption, required radical surgery. Thieves, murderers, perjurers, fae all faced the stake. But also, those who simply displeased him, those who resisted his will, those who threatened the fragile peace he sought to impose. One chilling account tells of 2 Franciscan monks who visited Vlad. Upon seeing the forest of impaled bodies, one monk praised Vlad's righteous justice, while the other, horrified, condemned his cruelty. Vlad, observing their reactions, impaled the condemning monk, stating that he must die for seeing injustice where there was only order. To him, the impaled were not just criminals. They were lessons, living, dying lessons. His reign was characterized by an almost fanatical dedication to law and order, enforced with a savagery that stunned even his contemporaries. The stories are legion. The golden cup, left unattended in the village square, unmolested for weeks, because no one dared to steal it. The foreign merchants who complained of Wallachian thieves, only to find the thieves impaled at the roadside with their stolen goods displayed around them. He once invited the poor and sick of Tagavi Feti to a grand feast. Promising to end their suffering after they had eaten their fill, he locked them in the hall and burned them alive, declaring he had freed them from the burdens of this life. These acts, horrific as they are, were not random outbursts of madness. They were calculated terror, designed to create a society utterly obedient, utterly fearful. He saw himself as a divinely appointed instrument, purging his land of wickedness, much like a surgeon cutting out a cancerous tumor, no matter how painful the procedure. But the true test of Vlad's methods, and the moment he truly earned his infamous moniker on a grand, terrifying scale, would come with the arrival of the Ottomans. The year is 1462. Wallachia, though brutally pacified by Vlad, remains a thorn in the side of the ascendant Ottoman Empire. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, now turns his formidable gaze towards Wallachia. He demands tribute, allegiance, and most importantly, Vlad's surrender. But Vlad, forged in Ottoman captivity, knows the price of This isn't just a border skirmish, it is an existential struggle. Wallachia, a small, impoverished principality, stands against the mightiest empire of its age, an empire that had swallowed kingdoms whole. The odds are beyond astronomical. Mehmed II, leading an army estimated at 100,000 men, perhaps the largest military force in Europe at the time Feng crosses the Danube into Wallachia. This was not merely an invasion. It was an overwhelming force designed to crush all resistance, to wipe Wallachia from the map. Any sane ruler would have capitulated, but Vlad was not sane, not in the conventional sense. He was a storm, a force of nature, driven by an unyielding hatred and a ruthless will to survive. What do you do when faced with an unstoppable tide? You don't meet it head. You make the land itself your weapon. Vlad enacted a scorched earth policy. Villages were abandoned, wells poisoned, crops destroyed. Wallachia became a barren wasteland, offering no sustenance to the invading army. His small, dedicated force, perhaps 30,000 strong, engaged in relentless guerrilla warfare. Hit and run attacks, ambushes under the cover of night, psychological assaults designed to wear down the morale of the colossal Ottoman army. But his ultimate weapon, the one that would forever define his legacy and chill the hearts of even the most hardened soldiers, was not blade or arrow. It was the stake. As Mehmed II's grand army advanced deeper into Wallachia, they were met not with organized resistance, but with a sight of unspeakable horror. Outside the capital of Tagavi Feti, Vlad had prepared a macabre welcome. Miles upon miles of impaled corpses, a forest of death. Tens of thousands of men, women, and children, arranged in ghastly rows, their bodies slowly rotting, picked clean by birds, a silent, screaming testament to Vlad's resolve. The air, thick with the stench of decay, became a shroud of terror. Imagine being an Ottoman soldier, marching for weeks, weary and hungry, expecting battle. But instead, encountering this silent, petrified army. The psychological impact was devastating. Even Mehmed II, the Conqueror, a man who had seen countless horrors, was reportedly stunned into silence. Some accounts say he turned back, declaring that a man who could do such things was not fit to rule, or perhaps was too terrifying to face. This was Vlad's masterpiece of terror. He understood that an army fights on its stomach, but also on its spirit. And for a time he succeeded, though the Ottomans would eventually force him to retreat. The campaign was a strategic failure for Mehmed, who had expected a swift conquest. The sheer brutality, the uncompromising resistance, the chilling spectacle of the impaled forest became legendary, sowing fear deep into the heart of the Ottoman Empire. Vlad had saved Wallachia, at least for a while. His tactics were monstrous, his methods inhumane, but they were effective. They ensured his survival and that of his small nation against overwhelming odds. But what does this say about the man? Was he a patriot, a necessary evil, or simply a psychopath cloaked in the mantle of a prince? His reign was brief, but its impact reverberated through history. The Ottoman chronicles described him as Kaiserly Voivoda, Feather-Stake Prince. European accounts, while horrified, often admired his staunch resistance against the Turks, painting him as a defender of Christendom. However savage his means, the contradictions are stark. A man who could order the most grotesque tortures, yet was praised for bringing stability and justice to his chaotic land. A man who defended his faith, yet committed acts that seemed to defy all humanity. His ultimate fate, like his life, was shrouded in violence and uncertainty. After being driven out by the Ottomans, who installed his more compliant brother Radu on the throne, Vlad sought refuge in Hungary. But his mercurial ally, King Matthias Corvinus, imprisoned him, perhaps fearing his volatile nature. He spent years in captivity, then was released, only to briefly reclaim his throne in 1476. His third and final reign lasted a mere 2 months. He was killed in battle against the Ottomans and their Wallachian allies, likely betrayed, and his head was sent to Constantinople as a trophy, a final gruesome testament to the man who dared to defy an empire. The exact location of his burial, and so the historical figure faded, but the legend began to grow. The stories of his cruelty, exaggerated with each retelling, spread across Europe in pamphlets, woodcuts, and oral traditions. He became a symbol of tyrannical evil, a boogeyman invoked to terrify children. Centuries later, these fragmented, horrifying tales would find their way to a certain Irish writer. Stoker, researching Eastern European folklore and looking for a suitable name for his aristocratic vampire, stumbled upon Dracula. The name, the association with a bloodthirsty ruler, the darkness of Wallachian history, it was a perfect fit. And so Vlad the Impaler, the son of the dragon, became the inspiration for the most iconic vampire in literature. But here's the chilling truth. Stoker's Count Dracula, with his mesmerizing gaze and supernatural powers, is a figure of Gothic romance. The historical Vlad, with his cold, calculating cruelty, his strategic use of terror, and his very human, very visceral acts of violence, was perhaps far more terrifying. The fictional vampire drains blood, but the historical prince drained hope, crushed spirits, and built a kingdom on a foundation of absolute fear. His was a terror born not of the supernatural, but of human nature pushed to its darkest extremes, a man shaped by trauma, driven by vengeance, and obsessed with control. He challenged us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the monsters we create in our stories are often pale reflections of the darkness that can reside within humanity itself. Vlad the Impaler reminds us that history's true horrors are not always found in mythical beasts, but in the hearts and actions of men. His story is a chilling exploration of power, fear, and the enduring human capacity for both him. He was a storm, a plague, a necessary evil, a demon in human form. What he was, ultimately, is a question that continues to haunt us. That is all for today's video. If you like this video, please subscribe, like it, and support us. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.